Good evening. Thanks very much for joining us on Business 360. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines that we're tracking for you at this hour. The stock markets wobble across the world after the minutes of the US Federal Reserve meeting signal further rate hikes. The Sensex is down nearly 400 points. The Nifty loses 100. Mid-caps, though, buck the trend. The index ends in the green. The US 10-year bond yield moves closer to its highest level in 15 years as the rate hike fears loom. Bond yields in India hit a 4-month high. The rupee weakens against the dollar, ending at a record closing low. Shares of Adani Power perk up after GQG makes a $1 billion investment. With this, GQG's exposure to the Adani Group is now about $4 billion. Bata India and Adidas are likely to join hands. Sources say both companies are in advanced stages of talks to seal a strategic partnership. That's a CNBC-TV18 exclusive.
We've right now put Ukraine on a back burner. That's not an issue of importance as far as development and growth is concerned.
Less than 20 days to go for world leaders to arrive in Delhi. G20 Sherpa Amitabh Kant says Ukraine issue is on the back burner. The focus will be on developmental issues and technological transformation. Calls for a global alliance to develop a governance framework for digital public infrastructure. That's another exclusive newsmaker tonight. In a bid to curb cyber fraud, the government imposes restrictions on the sale of bulk SIM cards. Bulk sale will be allowed only through business connections. IT Minister Ashwini Vaishnav announced a stricter verification and registration process. Over 80 people dead in Himachal and Uttarakhand over the last 4 days as rains and landslides wreak havoc. Chief Minister of Himachal blames rampant unscientific construction as the state faces a loss of more than 10,000 crore rupees. India's moon mission, the Chandrayaan-3, enters the final phase. The moon lander, called Vikram, detaches from the spacecraft. It will now continue its solar journey to the moon and is scheduled to make a soft landing on the 23rd of August. The Advertising Standards Council of India revises the guidelines to place additional responsibility on finance and health influencers. Says financial influencers can offer investment advice only if they are registered with SEBI. Well, let's start with the market action. Stock markets wobbled across the world after the minutes of the US Federal Reserve meeting signaled there could be further rate hikes. A range-bound session on the Lal Street saw the Nifty and the Sensex ending the day with cuts. So take a look at the Nifty closing about 100 points lower. The Sensex lost about 390 points today. The Nifty Bank was down by about 55 points. The Nifty Mid-Cap Index, though, bucking the trend, closing in the green. It was higher by almost 100 points today. So that was the picture as far as our markets are concerned. Let's go across to Prashant now. He's standing by to take us through what the market is weighing at this point in time. Prashant.
Well, finally, the market corrected. It started lower and stayed down, right? For the last 2 days, we've been getting negative global cues. US markets have been down. The market here would give an initial reaction and then spend the rest of the day in repair and would finally end flattish, right? Today, it was not to be the case. We started lower and then actually sold off more. The Nifty ending a little over 0.5% lower by close. Bank Nifty also ending down just about 0.2% lower. Mid-caps and small caps specifically came off sharply in the last 30 minutes of trade, but still much better as compared to the large cap indices. Cuts coming through in names like ITC and Reliance, responsible for about 50% of the losses on the Nifty. Power Grid, LTI Mindtree and Divi's Laboratories were some of the others. More declines as compared to advances, market breadth that is. So losers in IRFC, JSW Energy, Indian Overseas Bank, Global Spirits, there were blocks here involved as well. Religare, Dreamfolks numbers have disappointed and the stock's been down for the last 3 or 4 days now. And there was Balaji Amines, which was lower as well. Gainers and defense was a theme, and shipbuilders there specifically within the defense theme, which has done very well for the third day in a row. Cochin Shipyard up 40% in the last 3 sessions. So top gainer. There was Bata, our story there reacting very well. DB Realty, Amber Enterprises, JM Financial, Latent View, J&K Bank, Shipping Corporation of India, paper names like J&K Paper, West Coast Paper, and a name like Tribhuvan Das Zaveri for the second day running, seeing a fair bit of interest. Stability eyed in the US market. I think that will determine the near term for us as well. For the last 2 days, the S&P has corrected the most it has since April. And if the US is at the cusp of perhaps a bigger pullback, we are likely to see some consolidation, sideways price action here as well. Back to you.
Prashant, many thanks for joining us. Yes, weak global cues weighing on our markets as well. And speaking of markets, let's head out to the currency market where the Russian ruble has weakened against the dollar after plummeting to its lowest value since the start of the Ukraine war. Now, earlier this week, the Russian central bank stepped in, hiked interest rates to 12% to stem the slide past the 100 threshold. There has been speculation that capital controls could be reintroduced to help prop up the struggling currency. According to a Financial Times report, exporters may be forced to convert up to 80% of their foreign currency into rubles to raise demand for the currency. Now, Japan's exports declining 0.3% in July on an annual basis, indicating headwinds for economic recovery. This is for the first time in more than 2 years Japan has seen a drop in exports. This is largely led by low demand for oil, chip-making equipment and sluggish growth in China. Imports also down for the fourth month, slipping more than 13% annually. Now, without further stimulus, China is increasingly likely to miss its growth target of around 5% this year. Now, this as per brokerage firm Nomura. The report says, and I quote, "We also see bigger downside risk to our 4.9% year-on-year growth forecast for both Q3 and Q4, and it is increasingly possible that annual GDP growth this year will miss the 5% mark," end of quote. In fact, the country suspended the release of data on youth unemployment, which had recently soared to record highs. Other data for July showed a broad-based slowdown worsened by the property market slump, so things looking challenging in China. Now, back home, shares of Adani Power rallied in trade along with most other group stocks today. This after GQG Partners invested over $1 billion into Adani Power. With this, GQG Group's exposure to the Adani Group stands at about $4 billion. GQG is also investing in other Indian companies like JSW Energy and Patanjali. Nimesh is here with more on GQG's India bets. Nimesh.
Rajiv Jain's GQG is betting big on India and now increasing the exposure beyond the Adani Group stocks as well. While the GQG's investment in Adani Group is now crossed 25,000 crore rupees in the last few weeks, the fund has also picked up significant stakes in the likes of JSW Energy as well as Patanjali Foods. Yesterday, GQG committed a massive 9,000 crores by investing close to 8% in Adani Power. They bought the stake from Adani promoters. The global fund has also acquired nearly 1.5% stake in the last 1 week in JSW Energy, investing close to 760 crores. And last month, they acquired nearly 6% stake in Patanjali Foods by putting in close to 2,150 crores. They bought this in offer for sale. Now, the big bets for GQG in India are still the Adani Group stocks. Since March 2023, post the Hindenburg saga, GQG has invested across all the Adani Group companies. In Adani Green, they invested close to 4,000 crores. In Adani Enterprises, they've invested close to 5,400 crores. In Adani Ports, another 5,300 crores. And in Adani Transmission, they've invested 1,900 crores. So let's look at GQG's profile. It's one of the marquee global funds managing over $100 billion. In the international equity, they manage close to 40 billion. In global equity, they manage close to 30 billion. And in emerging markets, they manage close to 30 billion as well. Now, India stands out as the country allocation with nearly 35% exposure in the emerging market basket. Apart from the big exposure in the Adani Group stocks, the fund has also have some marquee names in India, which includes the names like ITC as well as HDFC Bank. Now, as I said, the fund is getting bigger and bigger into India. So let's see what could be the next on the radar as far as Rajiv Jain and GQG is concerned.
Nimesh, many thanks for joining us. That's GQG's India portfolio. Now, bond yields spiking across the world as fears over further rate hikes loom. US 10-year yield close to its highest level since the 2008 financial crisis. And in India, bond yields remain above 7.2%. Meanwhile, the rupee weakened against the dollar, breaching the 83 mark and ending at a record low. Lata joins us now with more on the money market action. Global fears weighing on the Indian markets too, Lata.
Well, absolutely. The rupee closed at an all-time low, as you said. And this was despite the public sector banks selling a lot of dollars, possibly on behalf of the Reserve Bank. Actually, on Independence Day, on August 15th, when Indian markets were not trading, in fact, 15th and 16th, in the offshore markets, the rupee had gone as weak as 83.50. And there was some intervention by the Reserve Bank there as well. Today, it was relatively better behaved. This is entirely because of the way in which the dollar has been strengthening. As you point out, the dollar reaching to 103.5, 103.6. Just about a month ago, it was below 100 at 99. And this turnaround is largely because while the US data is coming out stronger and stronger, the comparable, a currency is always a comparison between another country. ECB is likely to have stopped its rate hikes because of the problems in Germany and even to some extent in other countries. Japan, again, export weakness, unlikely that the BOJ will do anything in terms of the yield curve control. China, weakness. So weakness again in other countries is making the dollar look strong because the US data is strong, and that's working towards the rupee weakness as well. In the yield market, it's an entirely different set of factors. There is a domestic problem in terms of the July inflation number, which came at 7.44. And now the bond market in India expects that the incremental CRR, high cash reserve ratio hike, could become a slightly more permanent feature or could be spread to all deposits, or it's possible that the MPC may even contemplate, at least debate, a rate hike. So clear tightening from the Reserve Bank is expected. That's what you could see. And the other factor, of course, was the US yields, now at some multi-year highs. There's a sudden fear after the Fitch downgrade and other such related events, downgrading of banks as well, a fear that the US fiscal deficit is simply too high and it's likely to remain high for a goodish bit. US debt is likely to remain high for a goodish bit, and that's why you're seeing the steepening of the curve and US longer-term yields rising, and that's having a concomitant impact on other countries' yields as well, including India. In fact, if you didn't look at just the 10-year, you looked at the swap market, then there has been a 20 basis point rise in yields.
Lata, many thanks for joining us. Yes, the minutes of the US Federal Reserve meeting implying that we're not done with rate hikes in the US just yet, and that, as Lata was pointing out, having an impact across the globe. On to a CNBC-TV18 exclusive this evening. Bata India is likely to ink a strategic deal with Adidas India. Sources have told CNBC-TV18 that the anticipated partnership between the two brands is focused specifically on India. Vivek joins us now with more details. Vivek, take us through the possible contours of this partnership.
Well, that's right. What we understand is that there's a very interesting development that's likely underway between two large retail footwear brands. Both Bata India as well as Adidas are in talks for a strategic partnership, and this is for the Indian market operations that both of them are currently present in. Remember, Adidas is a very large player, in fact amongst the top 3 as far as the sports and athleisure brand market within the retail footwear segment is concerned. Talks, as per our sources, are said to be in the final stages, and we understand that the deal contours are currently being worked upon and are in the final stages, and an announcement is expected quite soon. We reached out to the management of Bata India. We also reached out to the management of Adidas India. At this point of time, they haven't reverted to our queries. We also understand that the main reason for this particular deal would be the fact that Adidas is actually looking to latch on to Bata's very strong retail presence. Remember, Bata has almost 2,100 stores spread across 730 cities in India, and this is a very strong network that they enjoy. And for Bata, from Bata's point of view, remember, Bata did FY23 revenues of over 3,450 crores, while Adidas at the end of FY22 had close to 1,500 crores. So it's a significant bump up as far as Bata's revenues also is concerned if they do manage to get Adidas on board. But still, important to see what are the exact deal contours in terms of whether it's an exclusive partnership or this is just a strategic tie-up in terms of shoes being available on Bata stores. Interestingly, within this particular space itself, within the retail footwear space, some interesting deals have happened in the last couple of years. In FY23, Metro Brands acquired Cravatex brands, which actually held the exclusive long-term license for global sportswear brand, that is Fila, and the Indian sportswear brand Proline as well. So that was a recent deal that happened. And also remember, Aditya Birla Fashion and Retail in August 2022 acquired exclusive rights for selling the Reebok India brand in India. So a lot of deals have been happening in this particular space. Another interesting one is what we are given to understand from our sources.
Okay, Vivek, many thanks for joining us. That's a CNBC-TV18 exclusive. And here's another. In less than 20 days, world leaders will arrive in Delhi for the G20 summit. India's G20 Sherpa, Amitabh Kant, has called for a global alliance to develop a governance framework for digital public infrastructure. Speaking to CNBC-TV18, Kant also said that the Ukraine issue is on the back burner and that the focus will be on developmental issues and tech transformation. Take a look.
I really seen that what we've seen during the G20 presidency is a scaling up of our ambition and our ability to take our learnings to many other countries. And we will continue to scale that up, as I said, that 133 countries require fast payments in the world. We will continue to scale that up very vigorously. And I think what we would require is an alliance where resources can be put in, which many other countries, including IMF and World Bank, are keen to do. Some of that solution we'll find during our presidency, but we'll continue to pursue this as an aggressive agenda throughout G20 in future as well, so that the digital public infrastructure becomes a reality for the world of tomorrow.
So what is this alliance likely to do? Look at governance or also look at ways of financing, given the aspects of global cooperation you just spoke of?
In India, private sector has done a lot of innovation and competition in the marketplace has come from the private sector. Without the private sector, you would not have had stock markets reaching the rural areas and Tier 2, Tier 3 cities. You would not have seen insurance. You would not have seen credit flow in a very big way, nor would you have seen fast payments to this extent, where PhonePe competes with Google Pay and WhatsApp competes with, Paytm. So you've seen a whole range of new startups emerging. You've seen, Zerodha, Upstock, Grow, you've seen GoDigit, you've seen Acco. All these are companies which could grow. They became national assets on the back of the public interest layer that India had built up. And I think that is the strategy which every other country will need to work on, that build the public interest layer on top of which private sector competes. That's important. But the basic principles of that is what is important is which needs to be accepted. The architecture of the digital public infrastructure is what you will see getting accepted during the course of our G20 presidency. That's important. And the second is about building an alliance on which work is still going on whether this needs to be driven by a range of companies or whether it needs to be driven by international financial institutions. For us, the focus has been on developmental issues. Focus has been on all issues of sustainable development goals, of issues of driving, strong sustainable growth, inclusive growth as well. Focus has been on technological transformation, on multilateral institutions of 21st century, and gender and women empowerment. We've right now put Ukraine on a back burner. That's not an issue of importance as far as development and growth is concerned. That's not an issue of importance for the global south. We've acted like the voice of the global south. That is an important issue for some countries, but I think we should leave it. I don't think we should bother too much. We should continue to focus on developmental issues at present.
And you can catch that conversation with Amitabh Kant, the G20 Sherpa, at 5:30 p.m. on CNBC-TV18. We will head into a short break, but up next, in a bid to curb cyber fraud, the government imposes the restriction of sale on bulk SIM cards. That and more when we return. Now, in a bid to curb cyber fraud, the government has imposed restrictions on the sale of bulk SIM cards. The government has said that bulk sale will be allowed only through business connections. Let's go across to Ashmit now. He joins us with more details. Ashmit, new set of restrictions being imposed by the government. Take us through the details of what has been announced by Ashwini Vaishnav.
Well, the government's focus is clearly on cyber fraud, and to that end is coming out with some important pieces of reform now. Ashwini Vaishnav today, speaking to the media, began by pointing out that reforms undertaken in the month of May, that's the Sanchar Sathi portal, has yielded some results, but nonetheless pointed out that more work needs to be done. And to that end, of more work, two important pieces of reform have been undertaken here by the government. The first one is that the bulk sale of SIMs, the way it takes place as of right now, is being discontinued, is being clamped down upon. That's the first big piece of reform. But what is important nonetheless is that the government has clarified that sale of bulk SIMs will be allowed, but only to commercial entities and to business connections. And even this provision of bulk SIMs to business connections and commercial entities will be done after verification and registration. So that's the caveat now being added. Bulk SIMs, the way it currently exists, being discontinued. That's the first key reform. The second is action against the dealers. What the government pointed out, what Ashwini Vaishnav pointed out, is that the complicity of dealers is a big factor that has emerged over the last few months. And to that end, important action has been taken. Dealers will now mandatorily have to get verification and have to get police verification and will have to register. These are two important pieces of compliances that have now been cast on these dealers. There are as many as 10 lakh dealers across the country. All of them will be subjected to police verification. Also, simultaneously, the government is also initiating prosecution and action against these dealers who are found to be errant and non-compliant. So, two important pieces of reform here. Ashwini Vaishnav expressing confidence that this will yield results in checking instances of cyber fraud.
Ashwini, thanks for joining us. Now, the National Company Law Appellate Tribunal has agreed to hear a plea by IDBI Bank seeking insolvency proceedings against Zee Entertainment. This will be taken up on the 31st of August. No notice has been issued to Zee yet. The bank has sought a week's time to submit additional documents. Remember, the NCLT had rejected IDBI Bank's plea to initiate insolvency proceedings against Zee Entertainment. The bank had claimed that Zee had outstanding dues of nearly 150 crore rupees. In a bid to curb food inflation and tackle surging global prices, India is set to be in talks with Russia to import wheat at a discounted price. According to a report by Reuters, the government is exploring options to import wheat via private and government sources to government deals. Now, after McDonald's, Burger King is the latest fast food chain to drop tomatoes from its menu across several Indian outlets. The reason for this? Patchy supplies. A company spokesperson said, and I quote, "Due to unpredictable conditions of the quality and supply of tomato crop, we are unable to add tomatoes to our food," end of quote. However, the company added it would put tomatoes back on the menu soon. Well, with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of Business 360. Thanks very much for watching. Do stay tuned to CNBC TV18. More news continues right after this. Of course, you can visit us on social media and YouTube. You'll find CNBC TV18 there too. Goodbye. Thanks for watching.